Welcome back, my business applications machine learning students. This is officially our first lecture. Today, I want to talk about the first step of our class, which is basically priming for your project. Now, for those of you guys that missed the first introduction class, real quick, this is an application class in machine learning. We're going to go over machine learning algorithms related to text, right? We'll see how far we can get. And then from there, we'll try to go into other types of mediums. I'm focusing initially on text, and a lot of machine learning classes tend to do that because majority of the time, the data you will be working at and the different corporations you will work with, if you are in typical corporations, right? Obviously, if you're working at like YouTube or something like that, it's slightly different. But nevertheless, for my MBAs, you will be dealing with a lot of textual data. Now, in terms of the structure of the class, there will be a midterm, but there'll also be a project, right? The project being probably the meat of the class. And this is why today, our first lecture, is about setting up our project. And I want you to think about our project throughout the semester. You'll be working on your project throughout the semester. And ideally, you are going to either launch a business, and again, when I say business or service, I mean in the most basic and simplest of terms, or you're going to launch a initiative within the corporation you're already working, or within other businesses, and I'll get to that in a second. So basically, you're going to be either a datapreneur or an intrapreneur. All right, let's talk about what do I mean by that. Now, the term datapreneur is basically a combination of data and entrepreneur, right? It's basically entrepreneurs that are central. Their business model is central to data to some degree. Either data helps them find their business model or serves their business model. For example, a lot of social media companies can be considered as data-centric businesses, right? They tend to make money off your data. Apps, those cute little apps that you guys download, that could be recording a lot of information about you, tracking you via your GPS, making money off your data. It's kind of creepy. We call that like surveyorship, entrepreneurship, right? It's kind of creepy, but it does make money. Another aspect of datapreneurship is where the data is not only central to the product, but it's also central to your operations to some degree. So think about also. I mean, this is kind of now moving towards investments a little bit, but there's a lot of data-driven investment funds, right? You heard about data-driven investment funds, data-driven businesses, et cetera, et cetera. That could be also considered datapreneurship or a datapreneur to some degree, right? But basically, a datapreneur is now where your competitive advantage is the data. Your competitive advantage is the data, right? Or the data is the asset itself. The data is the asset itself. Like you're controlling all this data, and you're selling it to different people. Another great example of this would be this is actually a great example. Some company initially, when Tesla had its initial factory, right, and it was at one point Tesla was one of the most shortest companies on the market, right? It was one of the probably in even financial history if you think about it. And so what one company did was they literally hired people or themselves. They sat outside the factory of Tesla. And what they did was they watched all the trucks coming in. They tried to identify what the trucks were, basically supplies coming in. And they definitely took count of all the trucks leaving the factory and taking account of how many cars were being made. What are they essentially doing? They're trying to gather the data for investors of how many products are coming in a certain amount of month or quarter, and how much was Tesla able to manufacture all of those supplies. Then they were just taking it like normal Excel sheets or the little databases and selling it to investors. And investors were using this information to front run the earnings, right? Because at a certain period in Tesla stock, how many cars they were manufacturing was not directly, but was a large factor in how up and down the stock prices moved, and it was a damn huge factor in those short positions. that some hedge funds were taking, right? So this is a great example where the data was the asset, right? The data was the asset. For our class, we're doing machine learning here, people, right? We're doing machine learning. Essentially, you are datapreneurs. Either you're going to get data and you're going to use machine learning to create some sort of results or some sort of classifier algorithms that companies can use that you want to try to monetize, or the data in itself will be an asset. All right, the data will be in itself an asset, or the data can help your network to some degree, make your network more cohesive to some degree, and you'll try to monetize that service to some degree. All right, we will flesh this out a little bit more as your projects come together. My intrapreneurs, what is an intrapreneur? An intrapreneur is basically, this term is for basically anybody within a corporation. So a lot of you people are working, a lot of people are working in different settings. The corporations tend to now want more innovation from their different I mean, they say they want more innovation from their employees. Essentially, most of the time they want cost cutting, and they wrap it up as an innovation. But nevertheless, a lot of my alumni, they've been handed the mandate from their managing directors, from their bosses, to create case studies in machine learning. Like, how are you going to, in your group, in your department, apply machine learning? What are you going to do with it? Are you going to replace XYZ job positions with it? Are you going to be able to apply more services with it? Are you going to be able to output much more results with it, right? And how will you do it? A lot of times my alumni are like, they have no idea. Most managers actually have no idea, right? So, but nevertheless, this is the reality of corporation. As an entrepreneur, you want to think of yourself as a little entrepreneur within a corporation. How can you completely innovate something? I always tell my alumni when they're graduating that your objective is, I mean, if you keep it simple in a lot of corporations, is to automate the whole group. You want to automate the whole group so that your whole group and your manager are not necessary anymore, right? Essentially. And I always make the argument that, look, in a corporation, if you are not working towards getting rid of a lot of jobs, somebody is working towards getting rid of your job. It's one way or the other. And the person that can automate more tends to be the one that gets promoted and gets the bigger salaries and bonuses, right? Or in the big opportunities in other corporations. But I mean, you could think that's a simple way to think about it. But in other lines, you can also think about it from a point of view of, we were doing things one way, but we can do things a totally different way and just completely make our data processes extremely efficient. For example, another simple example, in a lot of investment banks, they have these quarterly, monthly, daily, weekly reports, and it goes through so many different groups. And a lot of these reports are just horrendous, right? They're horrible because the data is always wrong. Maybe one of the innovations you can do is, using machine learning, you can train the algorithms to identify all these data elements coming in and saying, hey, this data element, flag this data element, flag this one, flag this one, flag this one, so that it becomes it becomes so much more efficient. At the mountains level, more efficient to make these reports and make them right. Make these reports and make them right. A lot of times in Wall Street, a lot of reports people don't really look at because, one, they're not really saying anything. Two, they're not really that accurate, right? Nevertheless, these reports keep being generated. So you could use machine learning to make reports that much more effective because you're using these algorithms to clean the data that much better. Another term for an entrepreneur is a corporate hacker. All right. Now, again, these are lofty terms I'm throwing out at you. You're still probably not sure how you're going to apply this. What are you going to do? Right. And there's a system we're going to use to try to figure this out for you guys. Right. That system is called effectuation. Effectuation is a nifty little, I probably should have, let's see, real quick. Effectuation is basically a framework for doing entrepreneurship. Really quick, I want to look it up. Yeah, so Professor Saras, I should have gave her a shout out on the slides. Professor Saras Sarasvathy, she's a professor at University of Virginia at the Darden School of Business. She's the one that actually came up with this theory. And essentially, what she did was she studied all these entrepreneurs in corporate America, and she just backed out their story or the history of how these corporations and these entrepreneurs came about. And she's like, you know what? What we essentially think of or what we're sold about entrepreneurship and entrepreneurs isn't exactly the reality for the vast amount of these entrepreneurs and corporations, right? Oh, cool. I did have her name over there. I didn't even look at my slides. Huh? So the idea basically was that entrepreneurs aren't these like crazy people like Stephen Jobs or how Stephen Jobs portrayed to be, that they are like, oh, I'm gonna change the world and all this, et cetera, blah blah blah. Essentially, majority of entrepreneurs are people that are just trying to make a buck the easiest possible way, right? And we say the easiest possible way, they're essentially leveraging their network. They're leveraging their resources. They're leveraging the people they know. They're leveraging the area they're in, right? And they're basically trying to see, okay, what do I have? What am I working with here? How can I make a buck? And they go from there. That's essentially it. When a lot of these, the reason why we have like all these tech entrepreneurs and all these, business exploding, et cetera, is because technology is a industry that in itself allows for exponential growth, right? Allows for exponential growth. Some other industries is kind of very difficult to do that. Like if you are a plumber, let's say you're a plumber and you're a great plumber. You do plumbing here and there. You make money when you're a plumber. The way for plumbers to actually expand their business is to hire other plumbers and then hire other plumbers, not just other plumbers, marketers, and then hire, pay for services for lead-in services, et cetera, et cetera. That's one way to expand their businesses. Some plumbers, what they do, they innovate. I know I've read of some plumbers that own certain patents, right? That allow them to make money on their patents, right? So I mean, you can grow businesses, blue collar businesses like that, but it's difficult, right? Whereas technology, look, you make a software, right, or you make some sort of website, and then you just grow that website. Think of, and it grows itself essentially. It's called, so give you the example. Let's think of like Facebook or Meta. It's a network effect. As more people come onto it, exponentially more people want to come onto it, right? It's that type of business. It's a business that leads itself to growth. But the principles behind all these, a majority of these businesses are, these guys are just trying to make a buck, right? Zuckerberg, the story goes again that he spent all night weekend just coding up Facebook. No, it didn't work that way. The reality is, if you actually read the story, he was always trying to make all these different websites and companies, and he had all these trial errors. And then he had an opportunity with the Winklevoss twins to do a job, and then there was a whole thing about that he stole their idea, blah blah blah, et cetera, et cetera. He wanted to. He came on an idea. Okay, let's just do a yearbook for Harvard, and it just took off from there, right? Or whether it's his idea or not, whether it's the idea or not. But there was tons of trials and errors he had before getting to that point, right? And that's the reality for everybody. That's the reality for a lot of different people. So the five key principles of effectuation, right? And these are essentially going to be end up being the five deliverables you guys have for your project. Part of these are five deliverables that will be part of your project. I'll talk about the other part. Is the first principle is bird in hand principle, and start with your means. Essentially, you define who you are, obviously, what you know, and whom you may know. Okay, basically, what are your skill sets? What are your talents? And then you want to establish your network, right? You want to establish your network. What is it? What is this? What is this network? Like you want to try to identify all the people you know that maybe you can do a little business with. When we do our project, when you do a lot of these entrepreneurs do these effectuation frameworks, there's a concept called piggybacking, where you just look at any existing business, and I'll talk about this a little later in the slides, and you quote unquote piggyback off that industry, right? You piggyback off that industry. So, but it starts with just making a list of what you do know, like what your skills and talents. What can you do day one, right? What can you do day one? Programming, whatever, blah blah blah. In our case, you whatever talents you have, your main talent we're going to add to that is the fact that you're going to have data that you can analyze through machine learning, or you will have data that you can train some sort of classifier through machine learning. All right? That will be one of your front and center of the skills you bring. That's the whole point of the class, right? But obviously, you guys bring other talents with it, and that's fine as well. And also, you need to set up the fact, you need to identify your network. And the part of, when we say set up your network, like whom you know, that is not only the partners you're working with, but it's also the people you're potentially customers. In the effectuation framework, your customers are your partners, are your network, right? It's all one big system, if you will. The second point is for the loss principle. We'll get to that second. Basically, how much you're willing to lose. Third is lemonade principle, right? Leveraging your surprise and obstacles, obviously, right? You might be thinking to yourself, yeah, obviously I have to deal with things that go wrong, but it's a little deeper than that. The things in the effectuation framework, the things that go wrong is the gold. The things that go wrong, just like in programming when I tell my students, the errors you have in programming, that is your opportunity to really learn programming. You can't learn programming unless you have errors. The more errors you have, the more things go wrong, the better and more efficient you will be at learning programming. Same thing in the effectuation framework, the concept. Your business idea, right, will really take hold in the problems, in the things that go wrong. That is where the business will be really found, and we'll talk about that in a second. Also, crazy quill principle that basically fleshes out, whom you know, that basically takes shape in the crazy quill principle. That's basically like, boom. All right, I got the people that want to work with me. I got the people that I want to give deliverables to. Let's go and try it. Right? You got it all set up. There's people that are like, all right, there's entities or partners that are ready, that are like, your idea doesn't sound too crazy, let's try it. All right, and then finally, pilot in the plane principle. And that's basically like, look, I can't control anything going on. I'm just going to focus on what I can control. Again, this is obvious, right? This is obvious. But this is important in the effectuation framework because we embrace the fact that we have no idea, essentially, how our business will, if you want to think about it to some degree, be how demand will work with our business. We have no idea how our business will actually even make money to some degree, if you want to think about it, right? But that's part we embrace. Again, we embrace that in the effectuation framework. It's a very simple framework, I would say, for business students, right? So that's why I kind of like it a lot. All right, the first one, starting with your means. All right, this is going to be a deliverable. I want you guys, I think I put it on the syllabus. I'll tell you guys when I want this, right? Now, as I say this, these 5 principles, they will change week to week. They will change throughout the semester. So don't freak out. It's part of the process. There's going to be many different iterations of all this, but start with the basics. Obviously, identify your means, your skills, your knowledge, network relationship, your financial resources. Don't worry about financial resources. I don't want you spending that much money or any money at all. Your financial resources essentially will be your time. Will be your time outside of this classroom. All right? That it will be essentially what you're spending for this business. But your skills and knowledge, please bring it to the table. Like I said before, front and center will be our machine learning material that you guys will be learning. That'll be front and center in terms of application. Your network and relationships. Here you're gonna put a little bit of work in, guys. Right? If you're in a corporation, this is gonna be easy. I'm in this division. I'm in compliance. I'm in this. I'm in that. Our group works with these groups. Works with these groups. I know these managers. I know that manager. My manager. You will need to get some buy-in from your managers, but I think most of the time they'll be kind of cool with it, right? Especially if you're trying to implement machine learning. That'll make them look good, right? Because then they can put that on their deliverables, like, yeah, my groups did machine learning. I did this. I'm freaking awesome. I'm the best. So that should be able to work out. Leverage your means, all right? Now, this part, it kind of jumping the gun a little bit, but essentially you want to, again, try to, I guess at this stage, you want to try to pitch, okay, how can you create value doing what you're doing? Identify your different partners, whatnot. This is your first step in saying, okay, I think this is what I can do with machine learning. This is what I can do with this group, right? Like, throw some ideas out there, basically, right? Throw some ideas out there. Here's an example of effectuation in action, if you will. IKEA, right? IKEA is the superstore. You guys all know it. Some of you guys have bought furniture from there. I bought furniture. I think I bought lamp stuff, something like that. Really cool place. I really like the way they structure the store and the treats and all that stuff, blah, blah, blah. Now, IKEA, my man that started IKEA, it was just initially like a grocery store, where they were selling and quote unquote trading different products and services. Eventually, what happened was he started selling simple furniture kits. Right, that apparently happened a decade later. Right, and from there it took off. From there it took off. My man didn't do complex market analysis. Right, he didn't do excessive survey tests. He didn't write a detailed business plan. He was just trying to see what the hell can he sell the people that come to a store or in the area to come to a store. And he somehow stumbled upon, maybe through trial and error, right? Maybe through just talking to him or whatnot, or just seeing what the need was for a lot of people. And he started making furniture kits for people. That's what we're talking about, right? IKEA is a huge company. Same effectuation framework in effect. Now, determining affordable loss, again, typically, traditionally in effectuation, what you would do is you would figure out, I can spend X amount of money on this, right? I can give this much time, and I can give emotional investment. That's hilarious. I can give this much attention to something, time and attention to something, right? In effectuation is very cool in the sense that you set a loss to how much money you are willing to spend on the idea. And your prototype, your what we call your MVP, your minimal viable product, or your experiment, your actual live business experiment, if you want to think about it. Here's an example of a situation which, I guess a fictional chef, Anna, who's a graphic designer, right? And she wants to launch a gourmet truck, whatever. Now, she's a graphic designer who, for some, and by the way, I hate, anytime I see the terms passionate, it's kind of cringy to me in the world of business, but let's go with it. She's passionate and a skilled cook, right? She likes creating unique recipes. She's obviously a graphic designer, right? And then from her point of view, she likes cooking. She creates different unique menus, and she's a graphic designer. So go to the initial point that we talked about, the previous point. Who are you? What do you know? What do you bring to the table? This is her example of that, all right? I'm a graphic designer. I like cooking. I make recipes. I spend time on this. And I'm a graphic designer, right? How could I bring this together? What does one have to do with the other? Well, I can design cool menus, right? I could design recipes, and I could design cool menus. And I could do basic marketing because I'm a graphic marketer, so I could do like cool graphics on social media for my menus, et cetera, et cetera. But you guys see what I'm talking about? Like, here's somebody that is a graphic designer and likes cooking, and she's trying to figure ways to bridge that. This is her skill sets and interest to some degree, and she's finding a way to bridge that. Likewise, you people you have no choice. We're gonna try to deal with massive amount of data. We have to figure out massive amount of data we want to work with. We want to analyze that corpus text data. At the very least, we want to analyze it or find a way to analyze it. What else do you bring around to that? We're all going to be doing that this semester, right? But what else are you? Who else are you? Like, do you like, I don't know. I have one student that's a professional sports bettor, right, for NFL. Do you like the NFL? Do you want to go through the NFL data? Do you want to try to analyze? Do you want to try to make predictors for each game for fantasy football? Do you want to try to predict what each player will generate game to game using past data, your particular knowledge of NFL, for people that do sports fantasy, right? To figure out who to hold, who not. There's a huge, this I think actually exists. A lot of services actually do this. You want to take a crack at it, knock yourself out, right? But that's what I'm talking about. Let's give another example with data and somebody's interest. Okay, so I have one alumni. She's actually a yoga instructor. Like she works at consulting and stuff, but she's a yoga instructor. So from her point of view, she would try to have to figure out, okay, I'm a yoga instructor. I love yoga. I teach yoga. How can I possibly marry that with data? Well, from her point of view, what she could do is she could probably find data sets or put together a massive data set of yoga studios, maybe in the area, or maybe I don't know, maybe coast to coast in the Northeast. Don't go crazy. Maybe within the Northeast, right? Like within hour, 3 hour, like I say, 1 to 3 hours of her radius. And she would want to provide this service now of not just yoga instructors, but yoga studios for potential people that want to do yoga, but also for people that probably want to rent out yoga studios or work with yoga instructors, et cetera, et cetera. Right? Again, I don't know if it's a good idea. I'm just thinking outside the box of somebody that has one type of talent skill, marrying that with data, right? And that's essentially what you want to think of. Just like in this example where Anna took her graphing, her actual skills of graphing design, and her, I guess, like of cooking, her hobby of cooking, and she wanted to marry it in some idea. Now, whom she knows, this goes to what I talk about trying to think about your network. She has a network of friends and family who love eating. Who doesn't have a network of friends and families that love eating? She has connections to the local arts community. She has a cousin who runs a restaurant and can give her advice. Bam. Right? Now, to this point, set affordable loss. And I love this principle. Love this principle. Instead of her getting a massive loan, finding a property, renovating it, leasing it, launching a full-fledged restaurant, instead, she's going to get a truck, a food truck. And I see a lot of, and you actually, this what's cool about this, you actually see a lot of chefs start off with the food truck line. And this is why we have like a, I don't know if you guys are big foodies. As you guys know, I'm a huge foodie. This has launched a big food truck in a like scene, right? There's a massive food truck gourmet scene. I love it. The food is awesome. And it's great for a lot of these chefs because they don't have to take on a lot of debt to try to test their concept. That's the idea behind it. And then any food truck that's making a lot of money, then that chef opens up a restaurant. And it's so much easier for them to open up a restaurant because they have the numbers for potential investors or banks. Ideally, they would want equity investors so they don't have to deal with debt. Nobody likes debt as a business. And it's easier to get those partners as those equity investors, those landlords to give you better leases because you got the numbers. In some degree, in some ways, you got the reputation behind it. As also, that's at the same time, you're making money, right? You're not broke. So she decides to buy a fully equipped truck, right? She decides her money, the affordable loss, the max amount she's about to risk, and she decides she could spend $5,000, right? This will be her. This will be basically how much money she has to experiment in effectuation framework. Unlike other entrepreneurship frameworks or like these business plans, these classes you guys take with business plans, you are not attempting to analyze the market, right? When in the effectuation framework, there is no market. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. We don't care. That's not the point. We do not care. We don't bother our time doing that because we just don't know. It's too much uncertainty. What we will do is, typically, we will say, I'm willing to, based on what I'm trying to do is, the cheapest I can run an experiment or a proof of concept will be X amount of money for Y amount of months or years. That is what I'm willing to spend on this idea. That's it. I have no idea if I'll make $1. I have no idea what the upside is. All I know, this is all I can afford to spend in terms of money, time and resources, whatever facilities are available, right? That's the idea behind it. And this is essentially the best way, in my opinion, to do entrepreneurship. This is like an option contract for any of my finance students. This is an option contract. You're buying your call option, right? And that's a sunk cost. You already spent your money on your call option. Maybe the stock price will hit, maybe it won't. But that is what you're willing to spend on that call option to bet on the huge upside of that stock. That essentially is what we're talking about here, affordable loss. Again, now for you guys, let's apply it to you guys. You guys, it's your time, right? It's basically your time. If we need to spend a little bit of money, please clear with me before you guys put it in your plan, right? I don't want you guys spending any money. What I want you, this part will be really easy. I want you basically spending your time. It's basically your time in outside the class for your project. That's what it will be. That's what it will be. All right. Now, did we jump the gun here? All right, here we go. Boom. Example three, or part three, if you will, leveraging contingencies. All right. What it essentially means. This is the lemonade one, the lemonade part, the obvious one. This is very important. This is really what will flesh out your plan. This is what I said that you're going to go through this. We're going to cycle through this over and over again. We're going to cycle through this over and over again. The data we use, the analysis we do. There's going to be a lot of failure, which is going to be great, right? I want you guys to think. If you want to think about crazy things, if you want to shoot for the moon, I have no problem doing it. Will there be failures? Of course there will be, but that's where you'll learn a lot. Your grade is not dictated on your success of your initial idea. Your grade is dictated upon the way you actually apply your data in given your skill set. That's essentially what it is. Whether it fails or not, I don't care. I mean, it's part of it's gonna fail. The first couple iterations, I'm telling you right now, it's gonna fail. All right. That's not the point. The point is, how do we pivot and how do we do our analysis of the data? How do we get better data? How do we analyze it? How we train our classifier models? And within our business plan, that's what really matters, right? That's what really matters. Now, the lemonade aspect, things are going to go wrong. But when things go wrong, that's what's awesome. There's a cool little story here about Richard Branson. Richard Branson, by the way, he's the CEO of what is it? Virgin Records, or I think of Virgin altogether. He is probably. I remember Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett talking about the fact that most CEOs aren't good in the world. Most CEOs are like, they're there partially because of luck, or partially because of just some inside information they have. They're not that good, or they just happen to get lucky in the right industry, and they're just riding the business model. The few CEOs that I do give a shout out to is Richard Branson. Richard Branson is a phenomenal CEO, phenomenal manager. I mean, I read a book about Richard. I don't know if it's an autobiography or biography, whatever, about Richard Branson. He is a interesting cat. I actually like the guy a lot in terms of the way he does his business. Now, there's this one story about him when he was younger. Before Virgin, they have Virgin Atlantic. I don't know if you guys they have British Airways and Virgin Atlantic. I don't know if you guys even know. That story of Virgin Atlantic itself is awesome. All right, I won't go into it, but that itself is awesome. Maybe in recitation we can talk about it. So, Richard Branson, right? He apparently he was going to the British Virgin Islands, and his trip got canceled. So his trip got canceled. Now, I don't know about you, but me, I'd be flipping out, throwing suitcases, going full Karen. Me and the Karens, we're going full crazy, right? My Karen crew, we're going nuts. Right? How could you do this? Let me speak to your manager. Let's speak to your manager. I'll be freaking out, people, right? Not my boy Richard Branson, right? Oh no. Richard Branson then got on the phone, right? Talked to some people he knows. He's like, yo, I need to charter a flight. I'm gonna go to the British Virgin Islands, playa. So he got somehow he got his hands on a private jet or a private plane, what have you, and he put up the money somehow, or he put a down payment on the flight, right? And then what he started doing was he's already there. He got he chartered the flight. He's got like some sort of down payment on it, so he knows how much he has to spend. He knows how much he's going to lose, right? He knows how much he's going to lose if it's just him going. He then goes to each one of these irate passengers and said, hey, listen, for a fee, I can get you on a plane. I can get you on my private plane. I just got a private plane. For this much for a seat, I'll take you there. We'll leave like in 30, 40 minutes, whatever, right? And obviously, if you're sitting there, you got your money back from the flight. I don't know how much the cost was, whether it's the same, more, or less. I'm guessing it might be slightly more. All right, I'm guessing it might be slightly more. But when you're in that state, people, think about if you're in that position. You're going to be like, it'll be a little bit more. Screw it, let's go. I mean, if it's at the price or cheaper, forget about it, right? But I'm assuming it was a little bit more. And I'm pretty sure, I don't even know if he charged something that covers costs or if to make a profit or whatever, but he filled up the plane. He filled up the plane from the people there, and off he went. He went to the Virgin Islands, and obviously he had enough, and I think he did it for both sides. So he booked it there, return trip. This is a phenomenal, not only is it a phenomenal story, people, But this is a phenomenal example of turning lemons into lemonade. This was they say this was the precursor to Virgin Airways. How awesome is that? This was the precursor to Virgin Airways. My man took this idea. He took this horrific scenario, and some of you have been in this situation, and he flipped it around. Not only did he solve the problem, maybe he made a buck, but this spawned an incredible business for him. And Virgin Airways in itself, the story behind that, that's actually an awesome story too. Right? Can't talk about it right now, really don't have time. Maybe another day. But in our project, that's what we mean. Like, did I give you an example? I don't think I gave you another example. But this is what I mean by taking lemons into lemonade. In the world of effectuation entrepreneurship, the things that go wrong, they're going to be your model. When we start off with your whatever your project is, you're going to be wrong. It's kind of not going to be fleshed out. It might be kind of rudimentary, but things will go wrong. You will hit walls, right? There's things that you're going to have a lot of stoppage points. Those roadblocks that come, the problems that we will face are basically, if you think about the universe or God kind of pivoting you to where your business should be, where the opportunity really is. And it might pivot to something completely different. That's fine. But that's where it's going to be like the aha moment, right? That's where it's going to be the aha moment. Let's see if I could think about. I mean, I would probably bring up Steve Jobs, but that guy was just one in a million in terms of how he went through business. But I mean, if I could bring up Steve Jobs, let me bring up Steve Jobs. So when Steve Jobs came back from his exile and he took over Apple, Apple had, I think, about 9 months of cash left, right before it went bankrupt. The first thing he did was he's like, all right, right. That was around the time that Napster. I don't know how old you guys are, but Napster was on the scene. People were downloading music illegally, right? People were downloading music illegally, and people were using these little MP3 players, right? I don't know if you guys remember that. So what he did was he launched the iPod, the first iPod, which is basically just an MP3 player that had a wheel on it, right? It just had a freaking wheel on it. That's all it was. And he's like, and people were like, you're crazy. Why are people going to buy this thing, an MP3 player? You could buy it for $10. His was a premium, just because it has a wheel, right? And he didn't stop there. He's like, yeah, we're going to do the iTunes side by side with it, where people can pay for music. And people lost their minds. They're like, oh my God, this company's going to fail. What are you talking about? Why would people pay for music? Why are people going to pay premium for this MP3 player? And why are people going to pay for music? What are you talking about? Right? Now, the problem Steve Jobs saw was that the vast amount of, I would say, older Americans, they don't really know how to download from Napster. And also, a lot of them didn't really want to download from Napster because remember, it was a federal crime. Like, they were really trying to crack down on this, right? So he saw that for a vast amount of Americans, this is a problem. And the other problem was that the record companies didn't want any of they were like lobbying Congress and then all the security apparatuses to crack on this down very hard because it was like a danger to their business, right? And I told you guys how these CEOs and corporations, do it. Like they just when they want something, bam, Congress runs it. I mean, this was back then. Now it's even worse. So Steve Jobs, the story goes, he was on the phone with these people, these record company CEOs. I don't know how he did it, but he got on the phone with these CEO companies and he basically, to some degree, cursed them off and said, listen to me, you bleep, 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 bleep. Again, this guy was crazy, right? And again, because he had this network to some degree, because he was the CEO of Apple before he got kicked out. So he did have some sort of contacts. You are going to sell me your catalog or lease it to me, right? Because remember, they had the rights to all the music. And you are going to thank me for it. Look how crazy this guy is. He calls these people up 2 a.m. He curses them off. He says, not only are you going to give me the rights to your music, you bleep, bleep, bleep? You are going to kiss my feet and do it, right? Because I am saving your industry, you stupid bleep, 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 right? So he bullied, cajoled, threatened, I guess to get some degree, blackmailed these people because he's like, I'll take your business, to give him the access to their music records. So then he launched the cute little iPod thing. And remember, the iPod was basically an MP3 player. But remember, he was a graphic designer himself. Like he studied calligraphy, but his whole thing was design. He added a wheel to the MP3 player, to the iPod. Remember, guys, the wheel, because he wanted to make the MP3 player stupid. He was brilliant in terms of user interaction with technology. If you want to tell me, if you want to know Steve Jobs' superpower, he was brilliant in terms of the way he designed the interaction between people and technology. That wheel was turned out to be a brilliant idea, marketing idea. But what was even a bigger killer was iTunes. When he got the rights to this music, and he was charging people, I forgot what it was, like 30 cents. I think it was like per music or per album, or maybe I think he started doing subscription services, whatever. And then he made it stupid easy. This is the songs you want, download it, plug in your iPod, it'll download onto it, everything is done. He made it seamless, he made it easy. And then what happened? iPod exploded. Everybody started buying iPod. You saw those commercials of people holding onto the iPod and they're dancing and they're doing this and the music. And what happened? The whole world, Napster died. The free service died. Why? Because paying for iTunes was so much easier. All the music was there. It was in high definition and it all connected to your iPod, which was easy to freaking use because of the wheel. It was all seamless. It was all there. And from there, Apple took off into the different versions of iPod and eventually to what became to the iPhone, which eventually changed humanity, right? And we can talk about it later. Again, in recitation. Just remind me in the recitation to talk about that. But I think we talked about that in recitation. But that's what I'm talking about. Taking lemons and making into a lemonade. And there was, nobody could do this business. The music industries were not allowing this business to happen. And he embraced that. And not only, I guess, forced these guys to do it, but he did it in a way where these guys had to do the business, finally cave in. He saved them. And all these record CEOs, eventually, they all, after getting cursed out by Steve Jobs, threatened by Steve Jobs, he was right. They thanked him. He's like, he saved our companies. He ended up saving our companies. You want to talk about taking a lemon and turning it into lemonade? That's incredible. Same with you guys. Same with us during our projects, right? That's why it's important that we hit the ground running with these ideas, right? Because as the problems come and as we pivot, that's your ideas and your projects will get that much better. It will get that much better. All right, finally, forming partnerships. This is the initial point I talked about before. This is what's cool about effectuation. And effectuation, you create a partner list. They call it like a crazy quilt principle or whatever. And ideally, what you do is you just leverage all the people you know. Suppliers, vendors, customers, clients, investors, mentors, right? You might say to yourself, I don't know anybody, right? You know me. At the end of the day, guys, at this point, I'm your professor. You know me. We'll figure it out, right? We'll figure it out. By the way, every step of the way when we're doing this, you're going to give me an initial proposal. I'm helping you guys with this step by step, all right? We're in this together. So please don't be intimidated. And please go crazy. Go as crazy as you want. Let's see what we can do, right? Both in terms of the tech side and the actual business model side. And the tech side, I'll help you figure it out. Don't worry about it. I mean, I have a set standard of what I want to teach you guys this semester. But if we need to go, for your individual projects, we need to go more crazier, more highly technical, we'll figure it out. And if I can't figure it out, I'll use my contacts to try to get it done. All right? So Your partnerships, I'm there, and also all the other people you know. And the cool thing about effectuation is, unlike other entrepreneurship frameworks, in effectuation, your customers are your partners as well. That's the beauty behind it. Your customers are your partners as well. We're all in on this, right? We're all in on this because basically you're going to go to your potential customers. You're like, yo, do you want this service? Right? Is this something you need, et cetera, et cetera? And the customers will basically tell you, yeah or no, right? And if they're willing to pay for it, you definitely got an idea. If they're willing to pay for it, you're definitely got an idea. The monetization part will be probably hard, difficult. Again, we have to experiment with that. Maybe customers might want this service, but they don't want to pay for it. But instead of paying for it, instead of with money, maybe they'll pay with it in other resources, which we can then leverage into money, right? Again, we can talk about this when we get your individual projects. Build relationships. I mean, you have an existing partnership, but maybe we need to do a little bit cold calling. I don't want to do any cold calling, right? I want to focus on your existing relationships. But your people you know, such as myself, might know other people. That's what I mean by building relationships, all right? We know somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody. We want to collaborate on that. We want to collaborate that on our idea. And here's a cool little example. Some web developers, what they have, I don't know if you know any web developers, but a lot of times they own their own servers, or they actually, in my case, lease VPS, virtual private servers, from another company, right? And on that VPS, we can put as many websites or applications as we want. I mean, it's basically the thing about having a computer out in a fixed amount of resource, like a computer out in the cloud, with fixed amount of resources, right? You can't expand behind that, right? It's not endless. Like they give you a certain amount of like processing power, they give you a certain amount of space and memory and all that stuff, and you can use it to launch as many websites as you want. If you have one large website, that's all you can use. But if you have a lot of mini small ones, you could have, if they're not that big, you can use whatever you want. Now, what some web developers do, which is cool, is that a lot of these small businesses, they need a website, right? They need a website. And they'll have websites, but they're not doing much with the websites. So what some web developers do is they'll go to these smaller restaurants or other small like stores, restaurants they know, and they say, look, you got this website, kind of sucks. Let me do this. I want to take over your website for free. I'm not going to charge you a dime. They already are paying a monthly service to host websites, right? So for them, it doesn't matter. And also, a lot of these business websites, they don't get much traffic. So it's not much more. It doesn't affect their infrastructure much more, right? But what they'll do is, a lot of these restaurants, they rely on, Uber Eats and all this other stuff. That takes a massive amount of cut of their business. So what these web developers do is like, look, I'm going to just sell your orders directly on your website, and I'll take a less of a percentage. So for the restaurants, what do they care? They're like, all right, whatever, whether it comes through Uber Eats or through my potential website. From my potential website, I have to pay a less fee anyway, right? The web developer will take a cut. He'll do whatever marketing he wants to do. For the restaurateur, it doesn't even not only does it make no difference, but he now has a website that he doesn't have to worry about, and potentially he's getting orders that will cost him less than from Uber Eats. It's a win-win for him, and it's a potentially win-win for the web developer. If the web developer can encourage, and maybe he'll put a sign on the restaurant, hey, you order from the site, so much easier. We'll save your order, blah, blah, blah. Boom. It just works out much easier. And for the web developers, they just go to the infrastructure and the code is really the same. They just rinse and repeat. And they put a whole bunch of restaurants on their current infrastructure to make this kind of money. And this way they can get some sort of recurring revenue, right? They get revenue sharing, right? And this is a great business model for them. So this is an example of how, in this case, they knew people and they turned them into partners. Or they knew restaurants that they were going to or in their local area, and they made them into partners. And once you do it a couple times with the partners you know, then you go to the other restaurants you don't know, like, look, I just did this for X, Y, and Z. At no cost, I could do this for you. You want in? Right? It's that much easier to expand your network. The proof of concept is already there. It's much more easier to expand your network. That is an awesome idea. All right, so that's what I mean by forming partnerships. This you guys can possibly do. And you have to sit down and think about this a little bit, your potential partners. Finally, controlling the controllable. All right, now, this is another one of those obvious things, right? Controlling the controllable. right? You want to identify your action, what actual actions and decisions you can do in the business model or the service you plan to launch. Again, for us, again, center point revolves around the data and the analytics we're going to process, right? That's central. You want to add other things, that's fine, but that is central. What's your team's efforts, blah, blah, blah. By the way, you guys can do these projects as individuals or as teams. That's fine. If you know somebody or you guys, people in class maybe want to like double up on an idea, that's fine as well. We could talk about that. Your resource allocation, again, we already talked about from before, what you're willing to spend the time in class, your efforts, et cetera, the data we're trying to get. And then focus on what you can control. All right. Set clear goals and milestones. I don't really that part right here, setting clear goals and milestones. You're not really gonna have clear milestones to some degree. You might have some sort of clear goals, right? But the clear goals and milestones will be more dictated by your partners, right? When you reach out to your partners and you reach out to what you can do or possibly do, that's gonna be mutually agreed upon, or you're gonna mutually come up to that idea, right? Like, what is it that your quote unquote potential partner or customer, what service do they want? Like, what are they looking for value? That's going to kind of dictate that, right? I think a better way to understand this is focusing on the Stacy's chips example. Have you guys ever had the Stacy's pita chips? They're delicious. They're in the stores if you haven't had them, right? Now, Stacy's chips, it started with this idea that this lady actually ran this food cart and she was selling sandwiches, pita rolls or something. And she would have this situation where she would have a large line. And by the way, not just her, a lot of these food carts, they have this problem of long lines. And what she would do is she had leftover bread from the days before, right, pita bread. And what she would do is she would just chop it up and fry it, season it with some salt, and hand it out for free to the people waiting in line. Right? That way they don't leave the line. There's a lot, when you're at food trucks, there's a lot of different food trucks. They don't leave the line. Get some free pita chips. They're delicious. And by the way, this is in the city. When I used to get there's like the falafel food trucks and stuff like that. They do the same thing. They all do the same thing. Free pita chips. They were awesome, freshly fried. This became popular for her, right? The customers would actually not only wait in line for the pita chips, but they're like, I want to order pita chips. Can I have pita chips? Can you give it to me in a bag? I will pay for it. Oh, baby. The best businesses are where the customers come to you. Hey, you're doing X, Y, and Z. I will give you money for it. Right? X, Y, and Z, I will give you money. That is the best business of all. And obviously what she did, she bagged it. And then from there, she scaled it. Bam, Stacy's chips. That's how it goes, guys. All right? That's what we mean by controlling the controllable. There were days she probably didn't have any people waiting. And then she had leftover bread. She kept that bread. For the days where she had massive amount of lines, she had no control over the demand of her product. She had no control about who came and didn't come on different days. That was uncontrollable. Okay? What could she control? She can keep the pita breads that are left over from the days she didn't have many people. And on the days she had a lot of people, she can fry it and give it out to them. That's what we're talking about. Controlling controllables. For your business idea, if we go back to the example of, let's go to the example of giving stock tips off of different documents or what different people say or publish, right? News reporting, right? Maybe nobody cares. Maybe nobody cares about the analysis you're doing, right? That is not in your hands. All that's in your hands is you're breaking down the analysis and maybe the stock jumps up or down based off the textual analysis you're ripping from different data sets, right? And you simply just post it out there like, boom, yeah, it went up, it went down, we were right, we were wrong, blah, 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 throw it on social media, and somebody hits or not. There's nothing more you can do about that, guys, right? That's basically the idea behind it. Cool? So that's the idea here. All right, now applying the effectuation framework for our semester project. All right, now it's your turn, guys. Bird in hand principle. These are the 5 things you guys need to set up. I set up, I think on the syllabus I set up a date. I'll give you guys an actual date of when I want your first draft of this. Actually, first draft, come to recitation with it. at this point now, for Sunday, come with your first draft. It does need not be perfect. You don't necessarily need an answer for everything. Just come with your first draft. Have fun with this, people. Hey, MBAs, you freaking, you boring MBA people. Have fun with this, please. Try to have fun with this. Come with your first draft this Sunday. All right? So let's see how I ended it here. So bird and hand pencil. Give me basically what your skill sets are. Remember, think of the graphic designer example. If you're a graphic designer, et cetera, whatever. And then give me your graphic, give you your skill sets. I guess what you're knowledgeable about also. So give me not only your skills, but also the things you're kind of knowledgeable about based on your experiences or whoever, what are you? And then the type of data that you kind of want to analyze. Textual data, again, textual data, all right? Again, don't be perfect. This will change. This is just your first go at it. That's part one. Part two. This will be basically now, I mean, there's not much you can do here. Here, tell me now what analysis you want to do with the data and where you plan to get the data from. All right, let's leave for this part right here. Tell me, where do you plan to get the data? Where can we possibly get the data, and what you plan to want to do with the data, right? And then we can go from, what kind of algorithms we're going to use and stuff like that. I'll help you flesh that out. Third principle. This you'll have to document. This is going to be something that you're not going to really. I mean, you can take a shot at it and already and say all the things that could possibly go wrong, all your roadblocks, throw them out right now. But this was going to happen. This is going to be developed more. This is going to flesh out during the semester. But give a first go at it. All the things that can go wrong, right? If you want, all the problems with what you basically are trying to do. Partnerships and stakeholders. List all your network, right? List your network. Obviously, I am part of your network as well. So list all the people, the business contacts you may or may not have, customer contacts you may or may not have. List it out, right? Again, no cold calling here, people. Organically, what you got, what you're working with. Finally, this part, the last part, pilot and plane. Focus on what you can control. This will change again. Just give it a first go, right? Focus on what you can control, what you can't control. All right? Now, knock this out. Give it like 30 minutes tops. Some of you guys some of you guys are like, might spend hours on this. No. Oh God, no. Right? Max 30 minutes. It should be an idea. All this stuff should be pretty like bam, right? All this stuff is pretty much like, it is what it is. You know what you are, skill sets. You know the knowledge you have. You may or may not have the idea of the data you want. Don't stress it too much over it. Just give me a first. Just cap yourself at 30 minutes. I don't want you going too crazy. All this other stuff, the partners, I'll put some little effort into it. But again, cap yourself, right? Because some people easily, depending on your personality type, could easily spend hours just contemplating this stuff. I don't want that. 30 minutes. Whatever comes to your mind, that's it. Put it up there. And like I said before, embrace the chaos, the uncertainty of this aspect of your projects and the aspect of the data we plan to use. Obviously, in our lectures, I plan to use cleaner data just so that we can learn the process much easier. But in the project itself, you're going to be dealing with chaotic data. That is fine. I will hold your hand through the process. Do not worry about it. All right? So like I said before, we will be attempting to work with different data, different machine learning techniques. You can work individually, or you can work in groups. Like if there are people in class that actually like your idea, this Sunday, as you guys talk about it, the other people, you guys can collaborate off each other, bounce ideas off of each other, and we can talk about it. Cool? So please come with your plans. We'll talk about it this Sunday in recitation, right? And maybe you guys can form groups, or maybe stay individual, maybe get ideas from somebody else, and we can flesh this out a little bit more. I'll tweak your plans a little bit more, and we'll go from there, all right? And our next lesson from here, obviously, after we do this, will be let's do some samples of downloading data. Bam. All right, guys, thank you. This is the first lesson. Please have your 5 deliverables for this Sunday, and I'll see you guys in lesson 2 and/or recitation. All right, have a great day. Have a great day, guys.